My name is Rochelle Hinds. I am actually from a little town north of Boston called Lynn, Massachusetts. It's right next to Salem, where all the witch trials happen and things like that. So it's kind of my claim to fame notoriety for people understanding where I'm from. I've lived in a multitude of places across my lifetime, but I'm actually back in Lynn.
Did you grow up playing video games?
I did, actually. I was encouraged by my parents to explore creative things. And while they weren't themselves necessarily big video game fans, they understood that technology allowed people to experience new things. So my father actually got me an Intellivision, which was the first system that I ever owned. And that was really my introduction to a lot of Atari games. So I played Burger Time and Keystone Capers probably more than I really should have when I was 7 and 8, but those were my two favorite games on the system. So Keystone Capers is this game where you basically were running from the cops. You were a burglar and you had to traverse linearly, very much like Pitfall, these levels where you were trying to pick up bags of money while you had a cop, very much English style, like a bobby with a bowler and a bobby club, chasing you, trying to knock you out. And the goal was to be able to traverse all 3 levels, get all the money bags, and not get caught by the cop. Burger Time, I tell people a lot of the time, is the game that made me a gamer. That's the game that I fell in love with video games. And it was, again, a simple traversing back and forth, but you were a chef running from peppers and other condiments that go on your burger, trying to complete the level and basically knock ingredients down to assemble a burger. And you used pepper very sparingly to stop little sausages and eggs that were chasing you around while you were trying to complete this burger. Very much in the style of kind of Donkey Kong.
Did you play that game with family members?
Initially I didn't. I played it by myself. I'm actually the older sibling for my sister and I. And so there's about 5.5 years difference. So at the time that I was playing that game, she really wasn't old enough to do it. And it was one of those things where there weren't a lot of people around me playing video games, and there really wasn't anyone else who was female playing games that I knew at the time. So it's kind of a lone experience for me. That really changed for me, in all honesty, once my sister got a little bit older and she started to get into games. So at about the time that the Sega Genesis system came out, my sister really loved Sonic. She loved the character, and I convinced her to go on a campaign to beg my mom, because I had a Super Nintendo at the time, but I really wanted a Genesis system. So I convinced her that she really needed to have that system as her birthday present, and we started playing the system together. And that's really when I started gaming with anybody else in the world. Because at that time, it was probably about 1991 or 92, I still hadn't run into anybody, even at school, who played video games. And I was friends with a lot of the guys in my class and not necessarily a lot of the girls. And even the guys weren't vocally talking about gaming, so I never brought it up. So it was really something that I kind of forced my little sister into so I could have somebody to play with. And she naturally gravitated toward it. Like, she was a Sonic and Echo the Dolphin master. I can't stand that game, but my sister, if you start talking about Echo, she can tell you every level, how to complete it, when it starts getting weird and start being a dolphin in space, and we'll spend hours talking with you about it.
It gets philosophical.
It really does, and it's kind of a bit much for a 6-year-old, but she was with it.
Being a girl, playing video games in an environment where boys weren't even talking about video games, how did that make you feel?
In all honesty, for a long time, that really made me feel like an outsider, because I didn't have a lot of things where I felt like I fit in. The school that I went to was predominantly Caucasian and Asian, and so there weren't a lot of people who looked like me. Like, I was the token person there. And so on top of that, the thing that I was really like enjoying, I couldn't really share with anybody comfortably because they weren't talking about it. And the few times that I started to bring it up, it was, well, that's the thing that dudes do, why are you doing it? Or it was like, not even a lot of dudes are doing that, so like, you're kind of a weirdo. So I really kept it to myself, in all honesty, until I got into high school, when I started to encounter people who were playing games and felt more comfortable talking about this thing that I really kind of undercover loved. Like, I didn't even talk about the games that I loved playing, even with my parents who were buying me those games. Like, I remember campaigning to get Super Street Fighter 2 for my birthday. And I had to convince my aunt to buy it for me, because at the time, like, those cartridges cost like $75 a pop, and that was a really expensive birthday present. And I remember when I got it, my mom made this big deal about, you better make sure that you write her a thank you letter. You better make sure that, like, you make it clear that you appreciate that money that was spent on you, because it's just a game. And I was like, no, this is life. What are you talking about? And I did. I tried to, you know, play nice and all those kinds of things, but it did for a long time make me feel like, here's another thing that separates me from other people, as opposed to something that joins me to other people. For me, I think very early on, I realized that it was a creative world. You know, I would look at these pixels and these characters that didn't look like me. Like, in Street Fighter, every character is from a different place in the world, and I didn't know geography well, but it was really cool to see, like, here's a character that's representative of China, and here's a character that's representative of Japan and of India, and they all have these special things about them that are their abilities, and they're different, but they're all joined because they're trying to win this tournament. And so you have to do the due diligence of helping them win by being good. And I enjoyed that. And then I found other games that were like that. And it just allowed me to experience these other worlds and honestly kind of a little bit other cultures that I was not gonna get exposed to in my little town outside of Boston.
I gotta ask you. Who's your
Chun-Li.
Before I can
Chun-Li. She's my girl. Chun-Li is my girl. Spinning star kick all day long. And I loved her because she was cool looking, but also strong. Like, she wasn't weak compared to any other character in the game. And I think that's part of the reason why I love Street Fighter so much, is like, every character could beat any other character as long as you were really diligent in learning their moves. There wasn't anybody who couldn't counter anybody else. There wasn't anybody else who was stronger than anybody else, even though the two leads were Ryu and Ken. Everybody could beat anybody. I
would go to the arcade after school. Mm-hmm. Did you ever go to an arcade?
I did a lot. We had one. The closest one that I had was at a little beach getaway called the Salem Willows. It was a little park, and it had 3 skee ball machines, which I will wreck anybody at because I'm built for skee ball. But it was the only arcade that I had nearby me growing up. Like, this was before Dave and Buster's, and like, even Chuck E. Cheese was about a 2-hour ride from my house. So the Willows was probably about 15 minutes. I actually got permission from my mom to bike to the Willows in the summer, and I would go down there and I would blow my entire allowance pretty much on pole position, Street Fighter, and skee ball, basically. And I would spend the entire day there, and then I would go to the beach and sit by the ocean and like grab a slice of pizza, and then come home and be like, I had a great day, because I got to play like new games. So when I first logged on to Xbox Live, I wasn't really exactly sure what was gonna happen, and I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to happen. I wasn't really aware of like people playing games online together. I had gotten Xbox Live because my husband had bought a pass at a GameStop coming home from work for me. He's like, you should try this. I think it'd be really good, because I've been playing a bunch of games by myself. And the first time that I logged into live, I was actually trying to play Dead or Alive. And I didn't want to play by myself because I was tired of either whooping on the computer or having the computer like really whoop me badly. And so I ended up in a lobby and I got paired with this guy who immediately was like, are you actually a woman? Because at the time, my gamer tag really gave it away that I was female. And I guess there really wasn't a lot of women on the system. And I just kind of wrote him back in the message, yes, I am. And his first message back was like, cool. I was like, oh, this is cool. And so we proceeded to probably play about 15 matches over the course of like the next 2 hours, just me and this guy. And it was just so fun. Like I would switch characters, he would switch characters. We tried to figure out how to counter each other. And we would just send messages back and forth of like, that was a really good game. I never thought that you could do that with that character. Or I was like, okay, I'm about to come at you at Sumi and you don't even know what's gonna happen yet. Mostly I didn't know what was gonna happen yet, but it was the most fun couple of hours I'd had playing on a console ever. And so I became addicted at that point to Xbox and Xbox Live because I didn't have anybody else to play with. And so it really changed my world, and it let me know that I wasn't the only person out in the world who liked to play games. Like it affirmed for me that there were other people from other places in the country who enjoyed playing games as much as I do. I just needed to find them now. And Xbox Live gave me the chance to find them.
Who was your character?
Ken Masters.
Ken Masters. My character? Blanca. All day.
Goddamn cheater.